All right, everybody, welcome in. Ready to explore a mystery that's equal parts fascinating and a little bit creepy.
Sounds right up my alley. What have we got?
Today, we're diving into the death of Edgar Allan Poe, that master of the macabre. And the best part is the circumstances surrounding his demise are as shrouded in mystery as one of his tales.
You're not kidding. I've always found it intriguing how his life seemed to mirror those dark, mysterious themes he wrote about. Even his death is an enigma.
Right. It's like he walked right out of one of his stories. Speaking of which, we've got excerpts from Poe's Wikipedia page, which you sent over, to give us some historical context. Plus, that Smithsonian article you dug up, talk about a fascinating read. It really digs into some of the most popular theories about what really happened to him.
Yeah, I thought it would be a good fit for today's deep dive.
Definitely. So, starting with the basics, Poe's Wikipedia page makes it pretty clear his life was, well, kind of a mess. Difficult upbringing, a writing career that was both brilliant and tumultuous.
To say the least. And let's not forget his fascination with death, which was a recurring theme in so much of his work. It makes the mystery around his own death even more, shall we say, intriguing.
It's almost too perfect, isn't it? And get this, he was incredibly popular in France, thanks to Baudelaire's translations. What do you make of that?
Well, it really shows you how universal Poe's themes are, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The macabre, the psychological torment, the exploration of that darkness within humanity. Those resonated deeply with readers all over, but particularly in 19th century France. They had a real thing for the Gothic and the grotesque back then.
Okay, so let's get to the heart of this mystery. Poe's death. He was found delirious, disoriented, wandering the streets of Baltimore. And get this, he wasn't even wearing his own clothes.
A true mystery from the get-go. And to make it even more intriguing, he died just a few days later, and to this day, no one's been able to locate his medical records.
Wait, they're just gone. Talk about a plot twist. What do you think happened to them?
It's frustrating, that's for sure. It makes piecing together the truth so much harder. To add to the puzzle, the newspaper reports from back then, they just vaguely mention Poe dying from brain ailments, which, let's be real, that could mean almost anything.
Ah, so they were being all discreet back then, weren't they? Instead of just coming out and saying something like alcoholism, which Poe was rumored to have struggled with.
Exactly. Alcoholism, syphilis, these things carried a huge stigma back then. Families often preferred to avoid scandal, so a vague diagnosis was the way to go.
Makes you wonder just how many mysteries are hidden behind those vague diagnoses, right? But speaking of mysteries, the Smithsonian article you shared brought up this cooping theory.
Ah, yes, cooping. It was a very real and very brutal practice during 19th century elections. Gangs would basically kidnap people and force them to vote multiple times for their candidate, and they weren't afraid to use violence to get what they wanted, even murder.
It's hard to believe something that sinister could go on so openly. Do you really think Poe could have been caught up in that?
It's certainly a possibility. What's interesting is that the cooping theory, as it relates to Poe, didn't even pop up until 1872.
Yeah.
Well after his death.
That's even weirder. It's like a historical cold case. Could Poe have stumbled onto something he shouldn't have? Become a victim of this brutal practice?
It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
It's giving me goosebumps. And you know what else I find eerie? This whole Rufus Griswold thing. Talk about holding a grudge.
Rufus Griswold, Poe's literary rival. He really played a huge and pretty unfortunate role in shaping Poe's legacy after his death.
He's the one who wrote that awful obituary, right?
Hmm.
The one that was full of exaggerations and painted Poe as some kind of drug-addled madman.
The very same. And it went beyond just a mean-spirited obituary, unfortunately. Griswold somehow became Poe's literary executor, ironic, considering their history, and he used that position to publish a biography full of lies, furthering that image of Poe as this unstable, immoral genius.
It's incredible how much damage one person can inflict even after someone is gone.
It really goes to show you the power of narrative, how easily it can be twisted and manipulated, even when it comes to something like a biography, which you would think would be more straightforward.
It's a good thing scholars have debunked most of what Griswold said, but still, that negative image stuck around for a long time and really overshadowed Poe's true talent.
You said it. It's like they say, history is written by the victors, and I guess that even applies to the literary world. But let's move on to another twist in Poe's story, shall we? The rabies theory.
Now, this is where things get really interesting. The Smithsonian article dives into this whole rabies theory. It was proposed by Dr. R. Michael Benitez, and I gotta say, it's pretty convincing.
It really is. A lot of the symptoms Poe had in those last few days, delirium, hallucinations, even that trouble breathing, those are all classic signs of rabies.
Are you saying Poe might have been bitten by a rabid animal?
Well, we can't say for sure, obviously.
Yeah.
But the timing of it all, it lines up scarily well with how rabies progresses. After those serious symptoms hit, the average person only has about 4 days.
Which is exactly how long Poe had. Man, that's chilling. And you know what's even creepier? Thinking about all that animal imagery in Poe's writing, it's almost like his death was foreshadowed in his own stories.
It's definitely a haunting parallel.
So let's see, we've got cooping, a jealous literary rival spreading nasty rumors, rabies. Who knows what else might be lurking out there in the historical shadows? It's almost too much for one mystery, even one involving Edgar Allan Poe.
Right. You almost couldn't make this stuff up.
Exactly. So what do you think this all means for us then, as readers, as people who are fascinated by Poe's work?
I think the fact that his death is still such a mystery, even after all these years, really speaks volumes about the power of his writing. It's been over 170 years and we're still trying to figure it out, still captivated. It's a testament to how good he was at drawing people in, even from beyond the grave, you could say. It's true. It's like his stories are so deeply ingrained in our minds that even his real life becomes this literary mystery. It's kind of hard to separate the two. But mystery aside, we have to remember that Poe was more than just horror and gloom. He explored it all, really. Love, loss, madness, the whole spectrum of human emotion.
Oh, absolutely. He had this incredible ability to dig deep into what makes us tick exposed, the good and the bad, the light and the dark. And he wasn't afraid to go there, to those taboo places. That's what made his writing so impactful. He made us confront things we'd rather ignore.
And don't forget his contributions to detective fiction. Those C. Auguste Dupin stories, even though there were only a few, they're groundbreaking. Basically created the blueprint for the modern detective story as we know it.
He paved the way for authors like Arthur Conan Doyle and Agatha Christie, for sure. And his influence wasn't limited to just one genre either. Take the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. That novel explored themes of isolation, the unknown, the very nature of reality. And those same themes would go on to become central to science fiction as a genre. It really is amazing. He died so young and under such mysterious circumstances, and yet his work is still influencing writers today. Just imagine what he could have accomplished if he'd lived longer.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it? You're right, he died so young. There's definitely that sense of unfulfilled potential there, and that just adds to his mystique.
Right. What if? And I think that's part of why we're so drawn to him and to the mystery of how he died. That sense of the unknown, the unanswered questions. It's what makes his work so timeless.
It's that reminder that even when faced with something we can't explain, we still crave answers. We want the world to make sense, even when it doesn't. And that's something we can all relate to, I think, whether we're trying to solve the mystery of Poe's death or just trying to navigate the complexities of our own lives.
So true. And that's probably why we keep coming back to Poe. He forces us to confront the unknown, to ask those big existential questions about life, death, what it all means.
And even though we may never truly know what caused his death, there's something rewarding in the search itself. Just exploring the possibilities, weighing the evidence. It's engaging in the same way that reading one of his stories is engaging.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
Exactly. It's a journey into the heart of a literary mystery, one that makes us think critically and creatively. And honestly, that might be the best way to honor Poe's legacy. To really wrestle with his work, keep the conversation going, and never stop questioning.
Well said. And speaking of questioning, when I was reading Poe's Wikipedia entry, something kind of jumped out at me. He had a very particular definition of what made a poem perfect.
Oh, yes. His whole concept of the unity of effect.
That's it. He believed that a good poem should aim to create one single powerful effect on the reader: beauty. And if something in the poem didn't contribute to that effect, well, it was superfluous. Get it out of there.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It provides a glimpse into his creative philosophy. He wasn't just out to shock or terrify his readers, even though he did a lot of that. Poe was a craftsman. He carefully constructed every element of his writing to evoke a very specific emotional response. For him, art wasn't just entertainment. It was meant to be a truly visceral experience.
It's like he wanted to create these worlds that readers could step into and have a truly profound, unforgettable experience. And that's why his work has resonated for so long. It sticks with you long after you finish the story.
100%. Poe tapped into something universal about the human experience, something that transcends time and place. His stories are about our deepest fears and desires, the things that both haunt and fascinate us, the things that remind us we're alive.
So, as we near the end of our deep dive into the mysterious death of Edgar Allan Poe, it seems fitting that we're left with more questions than answers.
It really does, almost as if Poe himself planned it that way.
Like he's up there somewhere, still messing with us after all these years. Was it that crazy election scheme? Or did he get rabies, which, talk about eerie considering all the animal imagery in his stories?
Hmm.
Or maybe there's a completely different explanation that we just haven't thought of. What do you think?
A literary mystery for the ages, that's for sure. It really goes to show you that even in death, Poe still has this hold on us? So it keeps us fascinated and guessing.
He definitely knew how to keep things interesting. So listeners, what's your verdict? We want to know. Take a deep dive into Poe's world, read the theories, look at the evidence, see if you can crack the case.
You might just surprise yourself.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the mysterious death of Edgar Allan Poe. Until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, but most importantly, keep learning.